Whatever you do, kiss you better start doing it right. All right, you better start doing it right.
I think Dance on a Volcano works in musical terms because although it's in 7/4, which is an irregular time signature, it doesn't sound like it. It still has a great lilt and a great feel to it.
These pieces, you can't really think, okay, I'm going to write a song in 7/4 and then start work on it. You just come up with a riff, and then it happens to be in 7/4 or whatever it is in.
It grabs you instantly, the riff. Down, 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 down. The song itself has a real good pace to it, yeah, and a real sort of strong melodies. Great introduction to the album.
It was a group composition. It had some quirky counter rhythms, but it was also reasonably commercial.
The guitar sounds and the mellotron sounds really complement one another at the end, so it takes it to a really nice finish. So I think it's a great musical package.
It stayed in the stage set of the band until the 90s, which none of the other songs on this album did. So that's testimony really to its appeal.
The grandeur of the music is sort of to do with the fact that it's in a flat key, B flat major, and it moves through major intervals. But you've got this kind of ambiguity between the major seventh, if I can demonstrate. The chords, the bass line moves down from B flat and down to A flat. But the actual melody at the top moves down from B flat to A, so you get that kind of that major seventh and the ambiguity. That Tony Banks uses that chord a lot in his work.
Interestingly, Dance on a Volcano and Squonk were the first two songs they started to do when they got into the studio. They got their music together and they went into the studio to do it, but Steve Hackett wasn't there for the first 2 weeks, and they put down Dance on a Volcano and Squonk pretty much without him. But in view of what would happen with Steve Hackett quite shortly afterwards, it's quite revealing that the three of them got the sound together quite quickly.
Holy mother, God, you got to go faster than that. Get to the top, dirty your mouth, don't cover it slow. She can turn you to stone, you better start doing it right.
The first assumption was that Genesis were finished. And then the next assumption was, so what is Peter doing? So all the attention was on Peter, and Genesis were widely perceived to be finished.
I certainly think people must have thought, where are they going to go now?
When Genesis lost Peter Gabriel, they really lost more than a frontman. He was also the lyricist, he was the face of the band to many people.
I mean, I know that they were looking for a singer, but the singer was there all the time, and they realised that. But yeah, I mean, how do you follow something like that?
It was almost as if Jethro Tull had lost Ian Anderson or Led Zeppelin had lost Robert Plant. It was that much of a potential loss.
Peter Gabriel had his wacky kind of out there attitude, you know, he was very theatrical and his costume played a huge role in his makeup, and you know, he was really something else.
Genesis had always been perceived really as a vehicle for Peter Gabriel's lyrical flights of fantasy and his concepts. Which in truth was never ever the case. Everybody had collaborated on lyrics in Genesis with Peter Gabriel. They were confident they had the music, and in fact by the time the rest of the world knew that Genesis no longer featured Peter Gabriel, the band had written pretty much all of A Trick of the Tail. So they were feeling fairly confident about it.
It was different, but it was still them. Yeah, I was amazed because I love the album. It's one of my favourite albums. I think it was an incredible work, you know, for them to come out with that under the pressure they must have been in. I still listen to it now and it still blows me away like it did, you know, when I was a kid. You know, wonderful piece of work, and to pull that off without Gabriel in the situation they're in, you know, it just shows that, you know, the kind of talent and the resilience of the band.
The departure in sound for A Trick of the Tail came really because the band were more confident in the music they were writing. They knew how to write good soundtrack material, which is what they'd always written for Peter Gabriel. Now they had a chance to push that music to the foreground a bit, which they did, and they felt much less constrained. They also, for the first time, went out and got themselves a proper producer, And he really pushed the sound of the band. He divided it up, saw what was good about it, and got it down in the studio properly.
In Trick of the Tail, the right hand is almost playing the steady rhythmic part, the kind of to set the tempo, and then the left hand is doing the complicated syncopated bit where it's moving up and down the scale crossing over against the beat. So kind of the left hand is moving much more than a left hand would normally move.
Trick of the Tail is an important track in as much as the band named an album after it, and it's got a typically quirky Genesis-type plot of a strange creature coming in the midst of people and them not quite being able to cope with it.
There's a lot of fantasy imagery involved, which is reflected on the album cover. It's not a song that should be taken too seriously, really.
They got no horns, they got no tails, they don't really know of our existence. Am I really wrong to believe in the city of gold that lies in the distance? Quite dark, I mean, God knows what that's about.
They had written it and not decided who they wanted as a singer. Ideas were passed around. Mick Rogers from Manfred Mann's Earth Band, he was one who came for an audition. Jess Roden was another. Phil reckoned he could do it, but in that totally British way, he was expecting to be asked to do it.
I mean, I know he'd sung bits and bats, you know, he'd sang a song earlier on and bits of melody lines like harmonies and stuff. Yeah, I mean, people must have been shocked in a way, like probably the last thing they expected, you know, he was the drummer for a start.
With all the jokes about drummers that applied then and probably apply now. So you didn't think of your drummer as being a singer or indeed of being a musician.
When I first joined the band, it was I was kind of viewed as class clown, you know, because I mean, I was a kind of the scapegoat in a way, which is fine, because I mean, like, drummer's role, which is what I was at the time, the drummer's role is very defined. It's like a goalkeeper, you know what I mean? It's like, he's there to really present the vibe, you know. You give the band the energy with the playing on the drums and the sort of humorous and the sort of personality vibe, then the band will sort of, you know, bounce off it.
Apparently how it went was when one promising audition turned into another studio debacle, and Phil sort of came round from behind the drums and said, actually, I'd quite like a shot at this.
They kept it in the family there and they didn't lose any credibility with it, you know. Fantastic album.
I can see why one might say it's kind of wistful or melancholic, and there are moments, of course. I think it's all kind of more moving and poignant and sort of more intimate and personal, actually.
The sadness of it, you know, it's just incredible.
Trick of the Tail has got its fair share of melancholy in it, but then again, all Genesis albums do.
I think that one of the things that makes that album in particular work so well is because of its consistency. Nothing really diverts much from the earthy vibe.
Very memorable tunes. You'll never forget them, you know, you hear them and they're there.
It also began to show a lot of Phil Collins' humour in tracks like Robbery, Assault and Battery. But then you'd get at the other end of the spectrum a track like Ripples with its musing on the passing of time.
The arrangements are more fulsome. You take a song like Entangled, where there's much more going on.
In Entangled, we've got the major seventh chord again, and such a beautiful, poignant riff. It's D major, I think it's in, but the first note starts, and then you get that major seventh, that C sharp over the D, and that ringing out, and so we've got the whole riff which goes and really kind of flirts with that major seventh continuously. Normally you'd have a D chord, and then everybody else, in a sense, would kind of do something along the lines of these those three notes, the notes that are in the chord, but Tony Banks goes for that really dreamy major seventh sound again. And then he also moves down for the verse, which is in B minor, which is the relative major. But you still get that C sharp ringing out over the B minor. So we're moving between the sadness of the B minor and then the kind of almost relief, but dreamy kind of melancholy of the D major with the C sharp in.
You couldn't get many bands covering songs like that, you know, because it was so the musicianship was so brilliant, you know. It was just they weren't showing off as musicians because everything fitted with the music, but it was like just the power of what they could do.
Live, it became a very dramatic part of their show.
It comes crashing in with this drumming and this really frenzied percussion, really setting the scene and driving all the way.
It's great. There's a sort of, you know, there's sort of typical Genesis English idiosyncratic sort of odd time signatures that is Genesis. It's a sort of fanfare to declare that the whole album is done.
It's one of those things that came up out of a jam, and they liked it so much they thought this would be a good way to end an album. And certainly as a live track it had a lot of mileage.
Rhythmically, Phil Collins is absolutely a force to be reckoned with. You know, that there probably aren't many drummers that are out there that are better than Phil Collins.
They had a very dry sort of, like I say again, organic sound to them. You know, I mean, it wasn't big, bright production like we hear later on, but yeah, I mean, I loved that sound, you know, and he's an incredible drummer again, you know, a phenomenal musician.
By employing two drum kits live, it was a fairly new concept. Obviously, the two drummers needed to be very, very in tune with each other.
I think the use of double drum sets, certainly as a visual thing on stage, was brilliant. You know, it looks great.
Yeah, it was a pretty exciting time. I mean, when you listen to it now, it sounds maybe slightly over the top.
Could be dangerous, but it works brilliantly with Genesis. The reason it could be dangerous is because immediately people think it's too busy. But if they're working together rather than singly, it works brilliantly.
Most of the time, Phil was out front, singing. And then, when he'd finished singing, he would quite often nip back to the drums, and then the two of them, and you could see their eyes light up as they sort of looked at each other and thought, yes, now. And off they went.
very strange. When you live in London or live around London and you get the music papers and things, you are led to believe that there is a certain type of music that is popular and everything else is not. And yet, if you actually ask the punters, they'll, you know, the people that come to see our gigs, will go and see Motorhead. You know, they'll go and buy a Clash album. They'll go and see Susie and the Banshees. You know, and they'll also come and see us. I mean, it's like same as me. I like Weather Report. I like Stephen Bishop. You know, I like John Martin. I just like all different kinds of music and artists. And it's the same with fans.
I mean, each time we go and do an album, we try and actually say, well, let's not do it, you know, let's not do it like Genesis. We try and be as different as we can. It is hard.
I mean, as soon as we start sort of going down, I dare say we'll start thinking about whether we're doing the right thing. But at the moment, we're writing music that we like and other people like as well. So, you know, as long as more people keep getting to it, then that's fine.
Because they had proved their point with The Trick of the Tail, which was far more successful than The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in sales terms. So in every sense, Genesis had made their point. And in fact, people were now beginning to say, where's Peter gone?
Going in a slightly different direction, you know, taking things probably a little bit more to the progressive extreme, working with sort of longer pieces of music, songs that are similar to the songs on Trick of the Tail and could also fit in there somewhere with the Trick of the Tail vibe because they are of a similar kind of feel.
There's the freedom to try things and the space to do it, which they didn't have before, or at least they felt they didn't have before. Now they were more relaxed about it. They could come to the studio, work their ideas through. They felt confident about the people in the studio with them. They were choosing them. There was really much less tension all the way round.
The 11th Earl of Mar is a great opener to what is a good album. They really chose wisely in putting this at the top again. Great decision by Genesis to do that.
The production is remarkable for the time. You know, at the time when I first heard it, I thought it was a little bit cluttered, but reviewing it now, it's really stood the test of time, and it's just very high-tech, high-end, classy, fusiony, but without being too fussy.
It starts off with a really sinister chord. It's almost like the same chord of James Bond, that "Good evening, Mr. Bond." It's a kind of E minor, but with a major seventh, so you get that kind of sadness of the minor. You also get the mysterious laziness of that major seventh over a minor chord. So a very, very peculiar chord, never ever heard before in popular music. So we've got the root note, and then instead of coming in with a note at the top, like most people would do, like most people would go for a note of the actual chord, Tony Banks goes for the major seventh note to start on. So instead of that note, we get this note, which is very, very unnerving and kind of ominous that something is going to happen. And so we get that movement. Very mysterious. And then of course the bass note moves up as well, so you get this kind of I get this fantastic change of chord and key. Very, very dramatic.
11th Earl of Mar was a very good opening to Wind and Wuthering, largely because it has a very Peter Gabriel type echo to it, and it could well be a bridge between the old music and the new. Admittedly, this was not the first album that Peter Gabriel hadn't appeared on, but its predecessor had been an album where they expected somebody else to sing.
Probably one of my favourites, Blood on the Rooftops, I think, maybe, which was a Hackett, well, at least the music, Steve Hackett, was a great guitarist.
So Steve Hackett's guitar playing was very, very important to the Genesis sound. In That Quiet Earth is one of my favourite songs because it encapsulates exactly what Genesis are about. The connection that he made with the music and his input was just perfect for the song.
Wind and Wuthering, though, is really Tony Banks' album. The centrepiece of it is One for the Vine, which he spent nearly a year writing and putting together.
This track follows the path that, almost follows the path that the opera composer would take. There's downright pastoral moments where the lead vocal drops out.
End of each verse, Phil Collins comes down, in melody. He descends in melody, and the lyric is it's almost like a depressing lyric. It's an afterthought. And then the second half of the song, it goes into this almost kind of 5/4, 3/4 phrase.
And then the band comes crashing back in, playing a series of riffs, go round and round, the vocal is reintroduced, weaves into a more sort of quasi-orchestral sort of outro, which contains classic Genesis sort of prog rock tendencies.
Some people say it's the best song he ever wrote, and certainly the melody and the rhythm interact in a way that makes it perhaps an epic. Obviously Phil Collins is the rhythm man, and I would suspect that many hours were spent honing it and bringing it to the shape in which we now know it.
The other high point of the album is the other big Tony Banks song, which was Afterglow.
Afterglow is possibly my personal favourite mid-period Genesis track. It's very complete, it's lush, and its musicianship, its musical quality very much complements the lyric, which is one of those unusual romantic lyrics that Genesis don't really seem to specialise in.
So in the song Afterglow, it's in G major, a really nice key for a guitar, big open G chords. And again, we've got the major seventh. If I just demonstrate the chords. G major 7, and then it moves up to a C. But then that major turns to minor. It's quite a common trick used by the Beatles and lots of other people. But very sad. The major turning to minor, and then back to G. The major 7th, and then we get F, and then D. But with an F sharp at the top, so you get this kind of chromatic moving back up to G. So the whole thing. And then, of course, the key change there, very unsuspected, moving up to E major. And a lot of composers would not really have the courage or confidence to be able to just shift to another key just like that.
But then, as usual, Phil Collins keeps it very tough on the rhythm track, on the drums in particular, and the arrangement is quite hard and positive.
It's almost like one of the anthem songs that they have, and particularly one I know that people like to come after a huge epic number in a Genesis set.
He's a genius. The guy's a phenomenal player, technically incredibly able, but a great writer and a great craftsmith, a great song crafter. And he's playing. He's just great. You know, it's a real pleasure to listen to, and he's got a real style of his own. You know that it's Tony Banks playing when you hear it.
I think in his early days he was actually an organist to begin with, and there's something about the way an organist plays to a pianist, and there's a lot of melodies that come through that wouldn't necessarily come from a classical pianist.
I think you can say that Tony Banks is the keeper of the Genesis musical keys, if you like, of their cupboard. He has always held that sway.
My role is definitely as a writer. You know, I'm not a very natural performer, but in a group nowadays you've got to kind of contain all the different aspects within the group. In the old days, I suppose there used to be writers who never performed and performers who never wrote.
It's amazing to note that Wind and Wuthering followed A Trick of the Tail 10 months on. How many top bands these days would release 2 great albums within the space of a year?
Wind and Wuthering is a step up from Trick of the Tail, and I think it's one of the most underrated prog rock albums, really, certainly in the Genesis package.
Tony Banks certainly thinks that Wind and Wuthering is one of Genesis' best ever albums. I think it's his personal favourite, probably because he contributed rather a lot to it himself. But I would say it certainly sees the band hitting their stride. Seconds Out was a necessary evil in putting set pieces like The Cinema Show and Supper's Ready to bed. They were songs that Genesis fans were used to hearing with Peter Gabriel, and they expected them to be performed.
I think Seconds Out, in a way, did lay Gabriel's Ghost to rest. It was a much needed album. It was a brilliant album. I don't think there'd be too many Genesis fans out there who would dispute that.
Comparing Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins is very difficult, largely because Peter Gabriel, I still believe, is one of the most unique performers we have in British rock. Phil Collins grew into the role. Obviously, he had the Artful Dodger film appearance to fall back on, and he knew his way about. But in his defence, he's never really tried to be Peter Gabriel Mark II.
Seconds Out shows that Phil Collins can be Peter Gabriel. Without the masks, without the long convoluted introductions, he can sing Peter Gabriel. He doesn't do it the way Peter Gabriel did, but then he couldn't.
When the two of them met at Milton Keynes in the reunion concert, Peter is reputed to have said to Phil, "You can sing the songs better than I can, but you can't sing them like I can." And I think that possibly sums it up.
For those who were not into Peter's conceptual intricacies, Phil Collins lightens the whole thing.
He has a more of a kind of lighter, sort of humorous approach, does Phil Collins, doesn't he?
They were perceived before as being a progressive rock band that you sort of needed to be reading the lyrics as you listened to them. Suddenly this had gone.
What you've got to bear in mind is at this time in rock music, live albums were the big thing. They were a very, very important marketing tool. Very much affirmed that these were rock bands, not pop acts, that were out there live on the road, probably on the road touring 6 months a year, and the public just were lapping them up.
I really believe that at this point, the band were almost at the pinnacle of their craft.
I think by that time they probably felt fairly comfortable without Gabriel, and they knew that their fan base was still there, loyal, and people were enjoying what they were doing.
At that time, I think they were using the light show, and Genesis have always been at the forefront of light shows. I think they always realised that they were very much a theatrical band, that in fact the music was the soundtrack to a story. And then as the stories became less important or moved into other spheres, they realised that it was the visual element that was important to them, and they'd always done that.
You've got to have the music, you've got to design, you can't just throw lights at anything, and you know, when you've got something like that with the light show, it's brilliant. It's just a whole experience, it's more two-dimensional, three-dimensional experience as opposed to just something being there. The lights out there to light the band, to blow your mind as well, at the right moment, on the right moment of a song, with its slow, fast, medium pace, and these guys were craftsmen at that.
The band were very keen to record Seconds Out because the production on early albums had been rather patchy, and they felt that by doing the material again live with recording techniques that existed in the late 70s, they could produce far better music in quality. So in some ways the band felt that these were definitive performances.
It's a great example of how much emphasis and focus was put on the drums. There were big, powerful drum fills, which nowadays would sound very, very busy and very sort of cluttered.
Rhythmically, Phil Collins, for me particularly at times, I feel that he's a little busier than I would like to hear a drummer.
But at the time it generated some great excitement, and Phil Collins was a master of that kind of drumming.
Seconds Out was the last album that Steve Hackett appears on. But by the end of the recording of Wind and Wuthering, he had pretty much decided he didn't want to deal with it anymore. He found that he was submitting songs which were then getting rejected by the others. Particular case in point, he came with a song called Please Don't Touch, which they practiced, and suddenly Phil Collins said, nope, can't get behind that, and they dropped it. Well, that song turns out to be the lead track on Steve Hackett's second solo album. So he clearly felt strongly about that, and the fact that the rest of the band rejected it, I think emphasised to him that there was a gulf between them.
Ready?
Nope.
Alright. Oh wait.
Okay, I'm ready.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, I can feel it.
I can feel it. Can you feel it? I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't go. What was the first song again?
Oh,
Jeff, you're not professional.
What's happening? What's happening? Once wrong, it's got to start like that.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Is that the house light?
What's up, Jeff?
Get out of the way, fat man. You got something to do. Open up your hands, or to their shine back up at you. Well, you gotta get out while there's gold in the air. Oh, it's falling like water, and it's coming down from those hills. No, no, no. Go west, young man. Earn $1 a day. That's what your family said.
Deep in the Motherlode was the opening track on side 2 of the album. If anyone can these days remember plastic records, vinyl records, you obviously had to turn the album over, and if the opening track of side 2 wasn't punchy and grab your attention, then you would probably go off and make a cup of tea or have a beer. So really what this track had to do was grab the attention again and make sure that you were really hooked into what was going on.
And you're rolling the days right on into the night. At the head of the line. Oh, it's no way, 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 way out of sight. No, no, no. West, young man, like your family said.
Suddenly down to the three of them. They found a new dynamic. And there is a dynamic about 3 people in a band rather than 4. I don't quite know what it is, but if you think of it, the great 3-piece bands all have something special. You go back to Cream, you take the Police. With a 4-piece band, you can start breaking off into factions almost at once. You can't do that with a 3-piece band, and it sort of solidified them.
5 people, as we were when we started, developing as sort of personalities, expanding as writers and musicians, need more room. And we could barely contain 5, and now, then we were 4 for a while, and they kind of developed, and you could barely contain that. And now there's 3 of us, and there's a lot more room.
By the time of Then There Were Three, Genesis had their fans. They also had the detractors, because Steve Hackett had left, Peter Gabriel had left, and certain fans had left with them.
I think that there were well-publicised rift with Steve Hackett, and obviously the album title tells you, well, okay, they're slightly having a small snipe at him.
By now, of course, they're feeling fairly confident. Things are on the up. So there's no question of replacing Steve Hackett. They now have the confidence that they can do this with the 3 of them.
And Then There Were Three again. I loved it. Absolutely loved the stuff.
Suddenly there's a swing to Genesis that was never there before. You can click your fingers almost.
Different slant, more brighter produced album, more bright reverb on the vocals, but some beautiful songs on there, you know, kind of a lot shorter, the songs.
If a song feels good, 3 minutes long, then we'll leave it at 3 minutes, you know, because there are some things you just can't stretch out for the sake of it. You know, it just feels right at that length.
From first to last, there's not a weak track on it, but then again, there are no real career highlights that you would look back on and say, this was Genesis' greatest moment.
Certainly the business heads, Tony Smith, their manager, Hit and Run, their record label and publishing company, were probably very happy to hear after sort of 6 albums, 7 albums, an album that was much more aimed at the commercial jugular.
You've got Mike Rutherford left to do the guitars there, but I thought he did a great job.
Mike Rutherford was certainly engrossed in his guitar work. He'd never been a lead guitarist, and suddenly he had to be one. He rose to that challenge admirably, actually.
I think Mike Rutherford's use of bass pedals was great, and in particular in Duke's End, you know, where he really beefs it up. It gives it that extra kick, extra bottom end.
They were very similar to the bass pedals of an organ, which enabled an organist to play the 2 manuals of an organ with both hands, but also to be able to play the bass parts with his feet.
There were only 3 of them, so this was kind of crucial.
A couple of simple presses would have great effect. They're sort of awesome power and make everything sound very big rock and very kind of, you could make a 3-piece band sound like a couple of bass guitarists and a couple of guitarists playing heavy power chords at the bottom end.
Go west, young man. I will if you knew that. Just what you know today. You'll be back where you started, a happier man. Oh, leave all the glory to all of those who have remained. Go west, young man. Go west, young man. Like your family said.
It was kind of, there was that and Many Too Many that were kind of, I guess the first time you would imagine that the female audience would get interested, you know, love songs.
Follow You, Follow Me is actually one of my all-time favourite songs. It's kind of a backdrop for my upbringing. My parents used to listen to Then There Were Three quite a lot.
In Follow You, Follow Me, we've got a wonderful, simple yet very catchy melody in the chorus. If I could just demonstrate. Just 4 notes, but very simple. But again, in G major, very nice open key for the guitar, and very, very simple. But then later on in the chorus, the left hand moves to the relative minor, to E minor, so we get that really sad sound. So.
It's hard to say why it works musically. I mean, I'm surprised that it's so beloved by Genesis fans. I think that must have been their most commercial song to date.
If you ask our ardent fans what they think of it, they'll say, oh, it's the group single. You know, it's obviously a commercial single, but I mean, to me, that's one of the hippest things we've ever done. You know, and I mean, the way it was written was because it was out of improvisation. It was a blow, basically. It just sort of honed itself into this sort of verse, chorus, verse, chorus, chorus, verse. You know, and the attitude behind it was totally, you know, on the level.
In fact, the producer, David Henschel, didn't even want it on the album. He thought it was so weak that that it was so un-Genesis, it shouldn't be on a Genesis album.
To the punters, I suppose, they sort of see it as their band trying to get a hit single, you know, and we've never really needed that. I mean, in America you need that, but also in America you're more likely to have a hit single with something that's, you know, related to what you do anyway, so.
Music from our album called Duke.
is a very transitional album, but it is moving towards what you might call the 80s era Genesis. It came after the band had nearly broken up, caused by Phil Collins' marriage collapse. He actually moved to Canada to try and save his marriage. In fact, Phil Collins' marriage collapsed anyway. So he comes back 2 months later and says, well, it's all over, so let's carry on. There was definitely a new feeling about them. There was a new sense of bonding. They sat in Phil's bedroom and jammed constantly. And at the end of the day, they'd go back, listen to the tapes, see what they liked, and that's where Behind the Lines, Turn It On Again, and Duchess all came from jams like that. And they were able then to fill out the sound, and it's the beginning of the new 80s Genesis sound.
Times were good. She never thought about the future. She just did what she would. Oh, but she really cared about her music. When it all seemed so important then. But she dreamed of the time when she performed, when everyone would cry for more. When all she had to do was slip into the light, for everyone to start to roll.
It's a really defining moment in electronic use within rock music.
Throughout the 80s, there's a huge influx in electronic drum sounds and percussion. People were experimenting with all sorts of electronic sounds.
The use of the drum machine on Duchess is interesting because the band actually jammed it up in rehearsal, and to actually be playing to a drum machine in that way was perhaps indicative of Genesis looking for new ways of working.
I think what's important here is that they don't overuse it. They use it in collaboration with live drums on this particular track. So it works really well.
The synth parts are great, really great. I mean, I must admit, I was never that big a fan of Tony Banks, but in retrospect, he's some excellent parts, and that's combined with the electronic drum beats as well. It gives the whole thing a very hypnotic electronica type of feel, which was quite revolutionary. I mean, you hear it now a lot, of course, but there weren't any loops at the time. So it was an early foray into electronica to very good effect, I believe.
And on the road, we're all but a few far by the wayside. She battled through against the others in her world, and the street and the yard. Falling down every time that she performed, when everyone cried for love. So all she had to do was slip into the light, for everyone to start to run. And all the people cried, "Child, what we waiting for?"
There you have it. That's the brand new single from Genesis from the album Duke, a track called Duchess. How are you viewing the prospect of the Liverpool audience for 2 nights?
There's towns you know are going to be good and kind of rely on.
There are supposed to be several hundred forged tickets in circulation. I mean,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on
according to
that?
the fans, the guys outside said 7,000 or 8,000. But I think you said 700 or 800.
I think
That's
7,000
realistic.
is a bit
It'll be a couple
toppy.
of million by the time we get down to the gig.
Does that
Oh,
cause a
yeah.
problem, presumably, before the gig then? I mean, if the tickets are having to be checked that thoroughly before the kids are coming in, then it must
makes
slow...
the process of people coming in very slow, which means we go on later. Which means there's more risk of us being drunk. Sorry.
This is an afternoon radio show.
That's right.
All I need is a TV show, that and the radio. Down on my luck again.
Turn It On Again, what a great track. I think that's probably my favourite Genesis track.
Turn It On Again has an almost rhythm and blues type edge in the old-fashioned sense of the term, which made it particularly palatable to American audiences who are now beginning to wake up to what they've been missing in Genesis.
I'll never forget the first time I heard it on American radio. I just couldn't believe it. I knew that it was Genesis because of Collins' voice, but I couldn't quite accept it because it's magnificent.
It also, typically with anything involving Phil Collins, has a very rhythmic feel, and in fact it's in 13/4 time, which possibly makes it unique among, if not Genesis music, then hit singles.
Crashes in with all this driving bass notes. You know, it's what creates the tension is this pedal note, continual pedal note from the bass and the guitar, just staying on the one note, the drums building it up.
It's quite hard to follow where the rhythm drops along with the vocal. They almost seem to clash, but it's perfect.
It's the classic rock track, simple as that.
It's driving me mad. It's just another way of passing the day. I get so lonely when she's not there.
By now they're starting to take in more musical influences. Some of the influences have come at them from people like Chester Thompson and Daryl Stuermer, who were American musicians who'd come in, and although they weren't contributing on record, they were touring with the band, and obviously there was an impact going down. And suddenly there's a new sort of swing to their music, which in itself breeds its own confidence, and you can hear it right from the beginning of the album.
Don't wanna leave you, don't wanna go, but now we're losing all control. Can't you see me? I'm slipping away. But only stay if you got will to keep me here. Oh no. Sweet time in my book. So many times since then I've read those words, and I'm waiting to see you. Or can you see me?
I think Duke's End is a really successful track for the reason that it's a classic prog rock song.
It's a farewell fanfare. It's saying, that's it folks, you know, we've given our best, we believe this is a great album.
Genesis always liked it to end albums on a high, and with Duke, which had a certain semi-concept running through it, Duke's Travel and Duke's End was almost like the full stop at the end of the album, the buffers at which the train finished.
It still shows, even at this stage, although it was getting more scarce, that they had that magic ingredient to really rock out, to really go for it.
It's very hard with new material, trying to introduce new material to an audience, because people basically come to a concert to have a confirmation, you know, and they feel safe with what they're hearing, and they like to hear the songs they know because then they can sing along with them, you know. And if you give them too much new material, luckily our album's been doing very, very well, so all our fans that are coming to see the gigs know it. You have to reach some kind of climax.
I think you might see Genesis together for one more concert. I think there's a feeling that it sort of ended rather messily. Once Phil decided he didn't want to be in Genesis anymore, at that point they should have knocked it on the head, really, I think. Whether we would see another new album from Genesis, who knows?